It should go without saying that Call of Duty has never looked or felt better in countless ways. But that doesn't mean that modern COD is the most fun or exciting that the series has ever been. Obviously, every player has their favourite titles, maps and modes, and many could argue endlessly about details as minute as which game has the best AK-47 reload animation. Personally though, I sorely miss that brief period in time when Call of Duty let me wall run and jetpack boost my way around maps. When it felt like the game was laser focused not on keeping me playing, but on making every moment as fun as possible. Because I honestly don't think I ever loved Call of Duty more than I did when playing one of the most widely ridiculed games in the series, Infinite Warfare. It's not by any means a perfect Call of Duty, but Infinite Warfare offered a unique, expansive campaign, dynamic multiplayer matches with unusual maps, and a brilliant horror-movie-pastiche zombies mode featuring David Hasselhoff. And while it's easy to dismiss the game as a trend-chasing failed experiment, if you look a little closer and give it a real chance, then 2016's Call of Duty was a ridiculously fun space oddity which deserved a whole lot better.
Welcome to Fleet Week!
The release of Infinite Warfare was regarded by many as an all-time low point for the franchise, and it's not hard to understand why. As the third game in a quasi-trilogy of sci-fi-tinged futuristic COD entries following Advanced Warfare and Black Ops 3, while also competing with the likes of Titanfall, the first-person shooter fanbase was, unsurprisingly, growing tired of the high-tech angle on the genre. At the time, it did feel a bit like the classic boots-on-the-ground shooter was dying out before our very eyes. And for the fans who never even liked jetpacks, 3 increasingly futuristic games in a row was definitely too much. It's also worth noting that back in 2016, after a decade of yearly COD releases, it felt like franchise fatigue was at an all-time high in general. I remember a lot of discussion about the regular release cadence and how sustainable it was for the series in the long term. Interestingly, it feels like that conversation is significantly less relevant now at a time when gamers are increasingly committed to just a few huge online games. And there's an expectation that they will be regularly updated and added to. These days, when there's a lot more continuity between titles on their unified game platform, yearly COD releases feel like the bare minimum required to keep the player base playing the game. Regardless, in 2016, most of the actively online COD fanbase had decided they were sick of sci-fi entries long before Infinite Warfare even came out and had a chance to change their minds. In the lead up to the game's release, the conversation around the whole franchise was pretty bleak. The first trailer for Infinite Warfare on YouTube was disliked to an unprecedented degree, and one thing that made matters even worse was the way they bundled in a remaster of the all-time great Call of Duty 4 with just the deluxe edition of the game. There were, of course, several other factors at play here, but ultimately, despite receiving generally positive reviews, Infinite Warfare continued to be hated by the online community after launch too. The game did still sell millions of copies, but it was definitely a commercial disappointment when compared with its predecessors. The fact that Titanfall 2 had released just over a week before probably didn't help much either, by siphoning off some of the few players who still wanted wall-running shooters. But then again, despite being fantastic, Titanfall 2 also wasn't a huge success, which only goes to prove how little people wanted games like this at the time. I personally remember enjoying Advanced Warfare and, to a lesser extent, Black Ops 3, as well as loving Titanfall. And as a sci-fi fan, I liked where they were going with Infinite Warfare. But I understood why a large portion of the fanbase didn't. It did look a bit like they were chasing trends, it did feel like they weren't listening to player feedback, and it was a huge departure from the template. Either way, I picked up Infinite Warfare a week or two after release, and I thought it was genuinely fantastic. So fantastic, in fact, that I've gone back to it almost every year since it launched to dip into multiplayer, replay campaign missions, or attempt to finally complete every Easter egg in the zombies mode. The thing I love about Infinite Warfare most, though, is that as far as I'm concerned, this was the last time that Call of Duty was willing to try doing something wildly different. It's a little unfortunate, then, that it went badly enough at the time that we've been stuck with mostly alternating Black Ops and Modern Warfare ever since. But remember playing Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare for the first time? Or when the first Black Ops came out? Or the first Zombies mode in World at War? Infinite Warfare was, for me, the last time it felt like they were taking a wild swing that had the potential to change the series forever.
Incoming! I'll take it! Hold on! No joy! I can't control her! STF destroyers inbound! All stations, shots fired at the Aegis control tower. Shots fired.
Ever since the release of the frankly incredible World at War, Call of Duty players have come to expect three key things from most yearly releases: a campaign, a multiplayer mode, and zombies. Obviously, not every game gets all three, with Modern Warfare entries in particular usually lacking zombies, but this formula is pretty ubiquitous. That said, the quality of each mode in each COD varies wildly, and it's rare that they're all great. In Infinite Warfare, though, I absolutely think they are. For someone whose first port of call in a new Call of Duty is always the campaign, Infinite Warfare definitely didn't disappoint. It's not my favourite campaign by any means, but it delivers on just about everything you could possibly want from it. Rather than tying in to any of the complicated pre-existing COD lore, the unique futuristic setting allowed them to tell a whole new story here. One that includes spacecraft skirmishes, zero-G laser battles, and an intergalactic conflict between the civilized forces of Earth and the Mars-based settlement defense front. Because Game of Thrones was big at the time, the SDF is led by a character played by Kit Harington, and he makes for a compelling enough villain who probably actually deserved more screen time. Your robot companion, Ethan, is also an entertaining presence, and the rest of the cast honestly feel like they could have been ripped out of any other Call of Duty. In a good way. Because that's the thing with this campaign. Even though it's set in the far-flung future and often in outer space, it still feels like a classic Call of Duty story. You may be fighting robots on Mars, but the action is delivered with the same military-focused charm. You might be gearing up on a spaceship for zero-G combat, but it echoes the rhythm and tone of gearing up in any other COD game. The guns may be futuristic, but they never seem too far removed from what came before. There is just enough difference to make it all interesting without losing the COD DNA. Honestly, I think they did a fantastic job building out this sci-fi world to appear like a natural extension of the military story into the future. There are a few odd quirks, of course, like the combat sequences in the Jackal, which don't exactly feel amazing, and although I sort of like that there are several optional side missions available halfway through the game, I do think that they hurt the pacing of the story and kill the momentum in the way they're implemented. Ultimately though, the story is entertaining and the action sequences are a lot of fun. And, of course, every mission benefits from the unique Infinite Warfare gameplay elements, which also make the multiplayer so great. Infinite Warfare's multiplayer features the expected variety of modes across a smorgasbord of cool sci-fi maps set up to allow and encourage jetpack boosting, wall running firefights. The distinctive selection of guns, which only got more interesting with additions post-launch, meant that a lot more experimentation than usual was required to find the right loadout for the right maps, and it also made gun game an absolute joy. There were several familiar ballistic types, but the quirks of the various laser weapons usually made them more fun to use, and above all, led to a feeling of unmatched variety. I won't talk at length about the nuances of weapon loadouts and unique abilities in Infinite Warfare because I'm definitely not the best equipped to do so, but suffice it to say that while it's not my favourite multiplayer approach, I think the rigs and associated abilities in Infinite Warfare work better than most comparable systems in other Call of Duties. There's plenty to unlock and try out, and the sci-fi setting necessarily provides options which are even more exciting than your standard COD fare. I'll also say, as someone who genuinely isn't very good at Call of Duty, that the wall running and jetpacks felt like they leveled the playing field on day one and gave everyone a chance to come out on top in combat if they were a little bit more strategic. It took a lot to master the gameplay, but it was easy to try and have some success. I get that it's not to everyone's taste, but it definitely made each match feel a lot more fun and chaotic in a very good way. Just about every match I played in Infinite Warfare was a joy, and I really wish I'd recorded more than this single clip from back in the day when I was actually passable at the game. I feel I should also mention that this was the last time that split screen in a COD game felt like it was entirely seamless and unimpaired to me. I'm sure that everyone's experience is different, but I've had issues with split screen in every COD game after this if I can get it working at all. Obviously, in-person multiplayer is not as popular as it used to be, but COD was always one of the greatest titles for split-screen gaming, and now you have to go back to these older games if you want to have a faultless and fun experience with split-screen. And though you couldn't play the campaign in split-screen, it did also work seamlessly in the fantastic Zombies mode. Though Treyarch are rightly considered the Zombies experts, I firmly believe that Infinite Warfare's Zombies mode stands among the best the series has to offer. Rather than trying to follow Treyarch's lead and make another dark, gritty experience, they tried something entirely new here, and the result is spectacular. Again, the mode itself plays in many ways just like what came before. There are barriers to rebuild, areas to unlock, and Easter eggs to find. But all of it is packaged in an entirely new, fun-focused premise. The original map, Zombies in Spaceland, is a bright, colourful and lively setting for the familiar round-based survival experience. Though more futuristic space stuff here could have worked, they chose instead to set things in an abandoned sci-fi theme park during the 80s. Framed as a quasi-movie set where the 4 characters you play as have been trapped by an insane horror director played by Paul Rubens. And if that description alone doesn't excite you, I don't know what will. There are no jetpacks here, but the futuristic weapons remain, and the map features everything from portals to traps to arcade games, along with twists on classic in-game perks, the mystery box and the pack-a-punch. And across all of the additional DLC maps, each themed around familiar horror movie tropes and settings, and featuring their own celebrity guests, this mode never failed to deliver an exciting experience. I'm not going to tell you that Infinite Warfare has the best Zombies mode in the series, but as someone who has played all of them for at least long enough to get to grips with their individual advantages and disadvantages, it is definitely my personal favourite Zombies mode. Partly because it feels streamlined and perfectly optimized, partly because the unique maps were a lot more to my tastes and a welcome change from the usual zombies fare, partly because of David Hasselhoff and Elvira, and partly because, just like everything else in the game, it is unequivocally fun.
Taking heavy fire, sir! We need to insert now!
Open the well deck!
It's up, we're hot!
Good to go, Gator! Cut the cord! Roll him out!
Alpha 2's down!
Bravo's in!
I do understand why some people didn't like Infinite Warfare, but I still think that most of the hate that it got was completely unrelated to the actual game, and I wish that more people had given it a real chance. If they had, though, and made the game a success, I have to believe that the past decade of Call of Duty would have looked very different, and not necessarily for the better. Still though, Infinite Warfare in my eyes marked the last COD entry allowed to take serious risks. And in an age where upsetting the status quo is riskier than ever, I don't know when we'll next see them try something just like it again. It's a strange situation, honestly, at a time when Call of Duty has become a game where Nicki Minaj and Homelander can fight each other with glowing assault weapons in modern military settings. Personally, I find that sort of thing a lot more outrageous than Infinite Warfare's futuristic setting ever was. But even though there are complaints, these nonsensical anachronisms will stick around so long as people spend money on them. And you can't entirely blame people for doing so, given that they are, aside from everything else, often incredibly cool. Either way, I'd like to see a future for Call of Duty as a platform where the developers have the opportunity to try entirely new things. And I don't see why we can't have the best of both worlds either. They could maintain the core multiplayer and Warzone experiences as hardcore fans have come to expect, while allowing dev teams to experiment with new concepts and settings for campaigns or zombies experiences, or even something entirely new, and have it all available in the same place. It would be great to have the option of jumping into jetpack boosting deathmatches in space, as well as World War II skirmishes, Black Ops missions, and battle royales. I'm of the opinion that, if nothing else, playing as a wrestler, vault dweller, or superhero would feel less ridiculous in a sci-fi setting than anywhere else. A franchise as big as Call of Duty still has to take some risks to stay relevant, and many of the risks it has taken in the past have clearly paid off. If not for Call of Duty 4, after all, we might still be playing games set exclusively during World War II. And while they are always trying new modes and messing with loadout options to varying degrees of success, it doesn't feel like they're willing to do anything radical. Despite being a commercial failure, Infinite Warfare delivered on everything that makes COD as a franchise so great, while bringing plenty of new to the series. And I hope that one day soon, we'll see another wildly unique Call of Duty which tries as hard as Infinite Warfare did to make every single aspect fun. How do you feel about Infinite Warfare? And would you like to see jetpacks make a comeback in COD? Let me know in the comments, and please do like and subscribe if you'd like to hear me talk more video games. Otherwise, I'll see you next time around.